I am Beth Doughty. I teach magnet gifted 7th and 8th grade history and language arts. I received my bachelor's degree in humanities and my first master's in teaching at Washington State University. I'm a current resident of Southwest Washington and always been a resident of the West Coast. My main research question is: in the 20th century, how and why did the United Daughters of the Confederacy use the Lost Cause to connect the West Coast to the post Civil War Confederate cause? As the answer to this is that as the faulty Reconstruction efforts failed to reunite the U.S. after the Civil War, supporters of the former CSA sought to effect and expand legislation that would disenfranchise former enslaved African Americans and empower the white citizenry by linking to the West. This is important because the West has always been critical to include in the study of the Civil War. Even though all the battles took place on the Eastern Theater, it was the goal to settle the contested slavery question in favor of the North or the South during territorial expansion into the West that led to the Civil War. The gaps include the role that women's groups and individual women held and wielded to influence civic action and legislation, as the emphasis is often on the male story. It will also address the establishment of Confederate memorials and practices in the West that are still present today, or were until recently, even though the facts are that the Civil War was not fought in the West, and the Western states were never part of the Confederacy and never allowed the practice of slavery as part of their constitutions. This research will help my audience understand that the West is key to understanding the story of the Civil War, past and present. It'll also understand the active presence of the early Democratic Party or the Republican Party in the Pacific Northwest in the decades prior to the Civil War showed that there were supporters of the ideals of the Confederacy in the West that allowed these women's organizations to find influence in the 20th century to spread the lost cause to the West. I have gathered already a library of secondary sources covering the Civil War in the West, the Daughters of the Confederacy, and early political parties in the West for my historiography. I have started curating historical newspapers through the Chronicling America database. I have begun preliminary research this summer at the Library of Congress in D.C., at the University of Virginia, and also at the Washington State Historical Archives. The Historical Society in my local county in Southwest Washington has also said that they have the archival material that I may access as well.